10 Most Hated Celebrities in 2025. Today, we're pulling back the velvet curtain on Hollywood's darkest mirror. These aren't just gossip headlines. These are the names that sparked walkouts, lawsuits, boycotts, and jaw-dropping disbelief in 2025. Some were once untouchable icons. Others were fan favorites who crashed in real time. And the question that haunts every story is simple. How does a star become the villain of their own legacy? If you're ready for facts over fluff and drama with receipts hit, like, subscribe, and ring the bell because Legends of Black Excellence is about to get real, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart's story in 2025 is a little complicated for longtime fans. He's still one of America's most reliable hitmakers in comedy-selling arenas, starring in new projects and running a growing media company. But the same visibility that fuels his success is also what makes him a magnet for criticism. This year, the loudest complaints aren't about a single scandal. They're about a pattern that some viewers feel has tipped from everywhere into too much. A clear flashpoint came during the 2025 NBA All-Star Weekend. Hart was heavily featured as a sideline entertainer and in-broadcast personality, and social media lit up with viewers saying the constant cut-ins distracted from the game. Analysts and fans called the event one of the weakest All-Star presentations in memory, and Hart became the face of that frustration, not because he caused the format problems, but because his presence was so dominant that it became the easy target. For older audiences who tune in for the sport, the feeling was simple. They wanted basketball, not a comedy show dropped on top of it. In business, Hart also drew raised eyebrows after stepping in as CEO of Heartbeat, his production company, amid reports of executive departures and layoffs. Even supporters who admire his hustle read the move in two ways: a hands-on leader trying to steady the ship, or an empire expanding faster than it can comfortably manage. That tension feeds the online narrative that Hart is chasing scale at any cost, and it rubs some people the wrong way. Then there's the international touring debate. Hart's acting. My Age tour stayed huge in the US, but some overseas stops sparked controversy for cultural reasons, and 2025 also saw show cancellations tied to local crises. To some fans, cancellations felt responsible. To others, they were framed as evidence that global fame comes with global friction. Here's the tricky part. Hart has worked hard to address older criticisms, especially the resurfaced homophobic jokes from years ago that cost him the Oscars hosting gig. In recent interviews, he's emphasized growth apology and learning. Many people accept that. Others don't forget as easily, and each new headline reopens the conversation. When a comedian says they've changed, do you believe the effort counts, or do you think the past should always outweigh the present? What keeps Hart near the most disliked conversation in 2025 isn't a court case or a career-ending revelation. It's the modern fatigue that comes from non-stop exposure, corporate ambition, and a public that now expects celebrities to be both entertaining and impeccably aligned with their values. Kevin Hart is still winning on stage and on screen, but 2025 shows that winning loudly can also make people listen for reasons to boo. Doja Cat. Doja Cat in 2025 is one of those artists you can't ignore even if you try. She's immensely talented, visually fearless, and still capable of dropping a chorus that sticks in your head for weeks. But this year, the same bold edge that built her career has also powered a growing wave of public frustration, especially among older listeners who value gratitude, consistency, and basic respect for fans. Musically, she's in a strong era. Her fifth studio album, V, arrived in late September 2025 with a more pop-forward sheen, and it launched a major arena run. The Ma-V World Tour spans 5 legs and 62 shows running from late 2025 into 2026. Ticket demand has been high in multiple markets, and live reviews often praise her stamina, choreography, and stage concept. So the hate around her isn't about a lack of ability. It's about attitude and the way she handles the people who helped put her there. The loudest criticism comes from repeated flare-ups with supporters online. A viral fan encounter earlier in 2025 reignited a long-running debate about boundaries after receiving a gift. She mocked it publicly, then deleted the post, but the clip spread anyway and racked up massive views. For many, it felt less like a star protecting her space and more like punching down. That moment didn't appear out of nowhere either. Since 2023, she's openly pushed back against parasocial fandom at times, saying she doesn't owe fans affection, and while some applaud that honesty, others hear contempt. On the road, the conversation got louder. Several Oceania dates drew complaints about short or low energy sets, and she responded sharply rather than softly. To her defenders, she's a hard-working artist, refusing to be controlled by strangers. To critics, she's a celebrity who seems to resent the job's most essential part, showing up for the crowd with care. She also stays controversial through image choices that challenge comfort zones, provocative styling, strange beauty aesthetics, and a willingness to look unpretty on purpose. That can be exciting, but it also keeps her in a constant tug-of-war with mainstream expectations, especially among viewers who grew up in a more traditional pop culture. Put it together, and you get Doja Cat's 2025 paradox, a performer at the top of her craft, yet constantly at odds with her own house. She isn't most disliked because she's untalented. She's there because many people feel the music says, "Come closer," while the personality says, "Stay away." And for audiences, especially those who still believe stardom should include a little grace, that mismatch is hard to forgive. Azealia Banks. Azealia Banks in 2025 is the kind of celebrity case study that makes people shake their heads and ask, how does this keep happening? She burst onto the scene more than a decade ago with undeniable musical firepower. Yet her public image today is defined less by records and more by a relentless trail of inflammatory outbursts. This year didn't introduce a brand new controversy so much as confirm a long pattern. Whenever she re-enters the conversation, it's usually by lighting a match. The biggest surge of backlash arrived in mid-2025 after she posted comments on X that many readers interpreted as defending or minimizing adult minor sexual relationships. The reaction was swift, broad, and unusually unified. Artists, commentators, and everyday users condemned the remarks as reckless and harmful. Banks deleted posts, but the screenshots didn't disappear, and the episode hardened an already sour public opinion. For a generation of viewers who grew up believing celebrities had a responsibility to model basic decency, this wasn't edgy. It was alarming. Not long before that, she reignited criticism through another headline feud cycle. A notable one involved Bebe Rexha after the Met Gala. Banks mocked Rexha's appearance in a way that crossed into body shaming. Rexha responded by revealing personal health struggles, including PCOS, infertility, and a miscarriage, turning the exchange from petty fashion snark into something painful and personal. Banks doubled down rather than stepping back, which only deepened the disgust. When someone keeps hurting others with words, do apologies still matter if the behavior never changes? What makes Banks especially polarizing is that her controversies aren't isolated to one group or one worldview. In 2025, she was criticized again for hostile remarks aimed at LGBTQ+ identities, and separately for xenophobic or transphobic insults directed at high-profile K-pop figures. Each incident expands the circle of people who feel personally targeted. Instead of fading quietly, she stays in the headlines through conflict, which creates a feedback loop. Outrage fuels attention. Attention tempts another rant, and the cycle repeats. Meanwhile, her artistic output, still respected by some for its originality, gets buried under the chaos. That's the tragedy at the core of her story. Azealia Banks remains a talented performer who could have been celebrated for innovation. Yet by 2025, many Americans see her as a cautionary symbol of self-sabotage, a person who chooses provocation over progress, scorched earth over reconciliation, and internet warfare over legacy. Cardi Cardi B's 2025 picture is a mix of undeniable star power and a growing sense of fatigue from parts of the audience who once cheered her loudest. She remains a chart force and a cultural lightning rod. But this year, the criticism has landed in several specific documented places, less about her talent, more about how she handles the spotlight. One major flare-up came from a live stream tied to merchandise sales. When larger sizes sold out quickly, Cardi snapped and used insulting language that many interpreted as fat-shaming. The clip traveled fast, and instead of a soft apology, she defended herself in follow-ups. For older Americans who expect celebrities to show a little humility when they misspeak, that stance felt like doubling down rather than taking responsibility. Legal headlines also resurfaced. A civil case connected to a 2018 incident with a security guard went to a jury in California, and Cardi was unanimously cleared in September 2025. Even with that win, the courtroom attention revived a narrative some viewers already had, that chaos seems to follow her everywhere. Around the same time, another civil suit reignited, this one tied to the 2023 Las Vegas mic-throwing moment, where a fan alleged injury after Cardi hurled her microphone in frustration. The case is still a lawsuit, not a conviction, but it keeps her name orbiting conflict. Musically, the long-awaited second album Era has been a double-edged sword. After nearly 7 years since Invasion of Privacy, many supporters were thrilled to hear new material on Am I the Drama? Yet others complained when she confirmed older hits like WAP 2020 and Up 2021 would be included. Cardi argued that those songs belong on an official studio project. Some listeners agreed. Others saw it as padding a record that shouldn't need padding. Family life has fueled its own noise. Her rocky split from Offset continues to spill into headlines, and Cardi has spoken openly and sharply about hurt and betrayal. She's also welcomed a new baby in late 2025, and that joyful chapter has drawn sympathy, yet it sits beside the ongoing drama, creating whiplash for casual observers. Put together, Cardi B's 2025 most disliked status doesn't come from a single career-ending act. It's the accumulation harsh words said on camera, impulsive moments that turn into lawsuits, long waits followed by messy rollouts, and a persona that's so raw it sometimes cuts the people watching. She's still a superstar, just one that America argues about every week. Nicki Minaj in 2025 sits at a strange crossroads. On one side, she's still a rap pioneer with a fiercely loyal base. On the other, she's become a recurring headline for conflict courtrooms and a style of online combat that many viewers now find exhausting. The backlash this year is not about her skill. It's about the turbulence around her, some proven in court, some still allegations, and most amplified by her own responses. A major verified pressure point is legal fallout tied to her husband, Kenneth Petty. A U.S. court awarded a former security guard roughly $500,000 plus after Petty was found liable for a 2019 assault during a tour stop. Through 2025, the plaintiff has pursued collection, and a California judge has considered forcing the sale of Minaj's Hidden Hills home to satisfy the judgment. Minaj's team says she was unaware of the unpaid debt and blames a former manager, but for the public, the optics are blunt. Her household remains linked to violent conduct and unpaid damages. Then comes the continuing civil lawsuit from her former day-to-day tour manager, who alleges Minaj struck and threatened him backstage in Detroit in 2024. She denies the claim through counsel, and the case is ongoing, so this is still an allegation, not a verdict. But it feeds a larger perception that chaos follows her professional spaces and that she often meets disputes with aggression rather than restraint. When someone is always in the middle of a fight, do you still assume they're the victim? Online feuds added gasoline. In summer 2025, Minaj clashed publicly with SZA, trading insults in a dispute that spilled across X for days. Soon after, her long-running rivalry with Cardi B flared again when Cardi's album topped the Billboard 200 with about 200,000 first-week equivalent units, and Minaj mocked the rollout, sparking a messy back and forth. For older audiences, these cycles read less like competitive hip-hop and more like a star who can't step away from the keyboard. There's also lingering distrust from earlier controversies that remain relevant in 2025. Her defense of convicted sex offender, brother Jelani Mirage in the past, and the fact that she married Petty despite his rape conviction, and later sex offender registry issues. Even fans who love her artistry struggle with the moral dissonance. Critics cite it as the core reason they've turned colder over time. What makes Nicki's 2025 reputation so polarizing is that she still commands cultural weight, yet she seems to spend as much energy battling enemies real or perceived as building bridges. For some, that's proof she's fearless. For others, it's why she lands on most hated lists, not because she lacks talent, but because the drama has started to feel like the main event. Zoe Kravitz. Zoe Kravitz's 2025 image is a study in how fast old moments can redraw a modern reputation. For years, she carried a cool, minimalist aura, rock royalty pedigree, indie credibility, and a quiet intensity on screen. Yet this year, a wave of public irritation hasn't come from a box office bomb or a single explosive incident. It's come from a stack of smaller, very real things that together changed how people read her. First, the internet dug up her 2013 remarks about Jaden Smith made when he was 14. The comments were framed as admiration at the time, but in today's climate, they landed as uncomfortable and inappropriate. They resurfaced after Kravitz publicly condemned Will Smith's Oscars slap and praised Chris Rock's composure. Critics accused her of moral grandstanding while her own past sat in plain view. For many older Americans, that felt like a basic fairness issue. Don't scold someone else if you wouldn't want your own words replayed. The perceived double standard has been a big driver of the eye-rolling around her in 2025. Then came a new headline that didn't help the vibe. During a light promotional conversation for her 2025 film Caught Stealing, Kravitz casually revealed she had accidentally given several friends hallucinogenic mushroom chocolates because they ate food from her fridge without knowing what it was. She told it like a quirky misadventure. The public didn't hear quirky, they heard careless. Even people who support personal freedom and lifestyle choices found it unsettling that someone could joke about others being unknowingly drugged. It reinforced an impression some viewers already had a celebrity bubble where consequences feel optional. Add to that the broader, Nepo-adjacent critique. Kravitz isn't only judged as an actress. She's judged as the daughter of Lenny Kravitz and Lisa Bonet, raised in rarefied circles, moving through fashion, film, and fame almost effortlessly. That background isn't a sin, but in a year where people are tired of privilege posing as authenticity, it sharpens the scrutiny. Every offhand remark, every glossy interview, every "I'm just being honest" moment gets weighed harder. What's striking is that none of this erases her talent. She remains praised for her screen presence and for stepping behind the camera with ambition. But 2025 shows how quickly the public can shift from admiring cool and mysterious to suspecting detached and tone-deaf. For Zoe Kravitz, the pushback isn't about one unforgivable act, it's about trust and the sense that her words sometimes float above the real world the rest of us live in. Megan Thee Stallion. Megan Thee Stallion's 2025 reputation is shaped by two forces pulling in opposite directions: a career that keeps proving her talent and a culture war that refuses to let her move on from trauma. In music terms, Megan Pete is thriving. She's independent still, charting, still headlining major festivals, and still building the hot girl brand into a full-on business identity. Yet if you ask why she lands on most disliked lists this year, the answer isn't about her stage skills. It's about the way a loud corner of the public keeps rewriting her story and how she's had to fight back in court. The biggest, most verifiable milestone in 2025 was her defamation victory against blogger Milagro Grams Cooper. A Florida jury found the blogger liable for spreading false claims about Megan and for circulating a manipulated sexual depiction. The judgment initially awarded $75,000, later reduced by the judge to about $59,000. The money isn't life-changing for a superstar, but the verdict was symbolically huge. It drew a legal line between gossip and harm, and it validated Megan's claim that years of online harassment crushed her mental health. She testified that the smear campaign pushed her into a dark place, which resonated with many viewers, especially women who've watched victims get mocked for seeking justice. Still, the hate machine didn't stop. The Tory Lanez case remains a shadow that certain audiences refuse to accept despite the facts. Lanez was convicted for shooting Megan in 2020 and later sentenced to 10 years in prison. Even with that legal outcome, conspiracy chatter continued in 2025, feeding a cycle of victim blaming that attaches itself to her name every time she appears. That constant doubt wears on public goodwill, not because she's done something new, but because the debate never ends. Halfway through all this, Megan also faced smaller waves of scrutiny that say more about celebrity expectations than her character. A viral Met Gala phone video sparked rumors she was banned, which she flatly denied. The rumor was baseless, but it spread anyway. Her high-profile relationship with NBA star Klay Thompson drew both support and sneering commentary, as if a woman's success must always come with a side of judgment. When the courts have ruled and the facts are clear, why do some people still choose the rumor? In 2025, Megan Thee Stallion is disliked by those who never wanted to believe her, and admired by those who see her resilience as the real headline. If anything defines her year, it's not scandal, it's survival in plain sight, while the world argues about whether she deserved the pain she already proved she didn't cause. R. Kelly. R. Kelly's name in 2025 doesn't spark nostalgia first anymore. It sparks a warning. For decades, Robert Sylvester Kelly was one of the most powerful voices in R&B, a man whose songs played at weddings, graduations, and family cookouts. But the last few years have rewritten that legacy, and 2025 cemented the turn he is now widely regarded not as a fallen star, but as a convicted predator whose fame enabled years of abuse. The clearest reason he remains among the most despised celebrities is legal fact, not rumor. Kelly is serving a 30-year federal sentence after being found guilty in Brooklyn of racketeering and sex trafficking. Prosecutors proved to a jury that he used a network of staff and associates to recruit, isolate, control, and exploit girls and young women over more than 2 decades. In February 2025, a federal appeals court upheld both the conviction and the 30-year term, rejecting his arguments that the evidence was insufficient or that the racketeering law was misapplied. In other words, the verdict stands and the justice system has doubled down on it. That case isn't his only conviction. In Chicago, he was also convicted on child sex crime charges and received a 20-year sentence largely concurrent with the New York term. Even with overlap, the total time behind bars is effectively a life-stretching punishment. Current calculations place his projected release around the mid-2040s, when he would be elderly. That reality has shut the door on any meaningful professional return. And for a public that watched the surviving R. Kelly documentary unfold, the idea of a comeback feels unthinkable. In 2025, another headline kept his story in the news. His lawyers reported that he was hospitalized after a medication overdose while incarcerated, arguing negligence and renewing a request for home detention. Prosecutors opposed release, emphasizing the severity of his crimes and his lack of remorse. The episode drew some sympathy for his health, but it didn't soften public judgment. To many Americans, especially those who remember how long victims said they weren't believed, the focus remains on the damage done, not the discomfort of the offender. What makes R. Kelly's fall so final is the scale and consistency of the evidence. This wasn't a single accusation in a blurry corner of fame. It was a verified pattern supported by testimony recordings and a federal jury's conclusion that his stardom functioned like a hunting license. In 2025, his music still exists in the culture, but his reputation exists as something else entirely, a cautionary tale about how talent can never outweigh accountability. Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby in 2025 represents one of the most dramatic reversals in modern entertainment history. For many Americans aged 45 to 65, he wasn't just a comedian or actor. He was America's dad, the reassuring center of The Cosby Show, 1984 to 1992, a program that reshaped primetime TV and family culture. That memory is exactly why the public anger remains so intense today. When a figure once trusted in living rooms across the country is tied to decades of sexual assault accusations, the sense of betrayal cuts deeper than a normal celebrity fall. The record that drives his standing in 2025 is clear and documented. Cosby was convicted in Pennsylvania in 2018 for aggravated indecent assault, then released in June 2021 after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned the conviction because of a prior non-prosecution agreement. The court's decision barred a retrial on that case, but it did not erase the wider body of accusations. Nearly 60 women have publicly alleged rape or sexual misconduct spanning multiple decades. Cosby has continued to deny all claims. Civil court has kept his name in the headlines. In 2022, a Los Angeles jury found him liable for sexually abusing Judy Huth when she was a minor, awarding her $500,000. In 2025, additional lawsuits remain active in several states, including a Nevada case where 10 women are pursuing claims under a new state law that reopened the window for adult survivors to sue. So while he is not currently imprisoned, the legal battle around him is far from over, and the public reads that persistence as confirmation that the pattern was real. Halfway through all of this sits another layer of judgment, his attempt to reframe himself. Cosby has spoken publicly about wanting to return to performing and has positioned his situation as a cultural and media erasure. For some, that sounds like defiance. For many others, it sounds like a refusal to accept responsibility. When a beloved icon says he's the one being wronged, do you hear courage or denial? Time has also changed his personal reality. Now, 88 years old, Cosby is reported to be fully blind and in fragile health. Financial strain is visible too in 2025. He sold a Manhattan townhouse for about $28 million to avoid foreclosure. Yet he still faces foreclosure pressure on another New York property tied to unpaid loans. The contrast between former wealth and today's legal financial grind reinforces the image of a legacy in ruin. In the end, Cosby's place among the most disliked celebrities of 2025 isn't driven by internet gossip. It comes from a bitter collision between what he once represented and what court's testimonies and decades of consistent accounts have said about his actions. For a generation that grew up trusting him, that gap feels unforgivable. Kanye West legally, Ye walked into 2025 already carrying years of public distrust, and this year only stacked more weight on that reputation. For many Americans who once saw him as a once-in-a-generation innovator, the conversation has shifted from what will he create next to what will he say or do next that hurts someone. The frustration isn't abstract. It's tied to specific traceable moments that kept him in headlines for the wrong reasons. Early in the year, Ye reignited outrage with another burst of anti-Semitic posts on X in February 2025. The messages echoed the themes that blew up his Adidas and major brand partnerships in 2022, including praise for Nazi ideology and conspiratorial attacks on Jewish people. He later wiped or deactivated his account again, but by then, the damage was familiar. People felt they were watching a cycle of hate retreat and repeat. Brands, civil rights groups, and a wide swath of fans treated it not as shock art, but as harm with real-world consequences. His professional life in 2025 didn't escape turbulence either. A surprise streaming appearance of Donda 2 in April vanished within hours, reportedly tied to disputes over unpaid production work. That episode reinforced the view that even his music rollouts are messy and unfair to collaborators. Meanwhile, his next project, widely promoted as Bully, became another stop-start saga. Teasers came, dates shifted, and fans who grew up on the precision of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy saw a once-disciplined artist now ruled by impulse. Public discomfort also rose around the way Ye presents his marriage to Bianca Censori. At the February 2025 Grammys, her ultra-sheer outfit, reportedly encouraged by Ye, sparked a huge debate about humiliation versus empowerment. A lot of viewers, especially older ones, weren't scandalized by nudity itself. They were bothered by the feeling that the moment was engineered to provoke attention at her expense. Then, late in 2025, another personal controversy resurfaced. Through Kim Kardashian's account on The Kardashians, she said Ye had accused her of faking the 2016 Paris robbery. Considering she testified in court this year about the trauma and the stolen jewelry value around $10 million, the accusation read to many as cruel revisionism. Even people who try to separate art from artist saw that as a new low. By the end of 2025, Ye remains a brilliant musician in the rearview mirror and a constant source of public strain in the present. The anger around him isn't built on rumors, it's built on repeated documented choices that people feel he refuses to outgrow. That's the 2025 Hall of Backlash: 10 Famous Lives Where Talent Couldn't Silence Scandal, Ego, or Harm. At Legends of Black Excellence, we don't chase clicks with rumors, we follow what's proven, what's documented, and what it means for culture. Some of these stars may repair their names. Others may never step out of the shadows they created. And maybe the deeper issue isn't them, but us. Here's the debate for your comments. Should art be judged on its own, or is the artist inseparable from the damage they do when the cameras stop rolling and the lights fade forever too?